We know that Altadena is going to be a different place visually. We expect to see new neighbors as time goes on, but we also want to see our old neighbors come back. As long as we can keep most of the residents, it will still be Altadena, and it will still be that pleasant place that you just come to and call it home. I am Kenny. Most people know me as Kenny Arts. I began my business, Kenny Arts and Illustrations, years ago. I've been painting in Pasadena, Altadena for probably 50 years at least. After the Eaton Fire destroyed a lot of Altadena, I just knew I had to come back and recapture it in the present state before it turns into a parking lot, which is starting to do real quick now. We're on the corner of Lake Avenue and Mariposa here in Altadena. It's part of the business district and one of the areas where I frequented quite a bit. And I'm really a proud Altadenian. I've gotten to know a lot of the people that live here, business owners, employees. It's the type of place that I could go in and not have to be in a hurry to get out, because a lot of times I'd end up in friendly conversations with either customers of the business or employees or employers. Altadena is just it's a friendly place. It's a real neighborhood, and that's what I'm hoping to return to as the years go by. My house, it was a Spanish-style home, a mile and a half from here. I had been in there for 38 years, so my kids grew up in that house. I had a studio there where I had all my artwork and things. The day after the fire, I was able to get up to Altadena and found that my house was gone, as well as every house on my block. It's one of the strangest things. It was kind of like walking through a war zone. There were still some big fires here on Lake Avenue, but in the neighborhoods, a lot of the fires had gone out, but I would see little flames flickering from the foundations. That was because the gas was still on. The smell of gas was just very strong. The thing that makes Altadena are the people. So if we can get as many people in Altadena to come back and rebuild as possible, that'll be a good thing. One of the things that I'm concerned about now is that I've already seen the developers, the speculators checking out Altadena. Some people have already sold the properties, and who knows what it's going to look like a few years from now. My desire is that Altadena will return. One of the things about Altadena is a very rich artistic community. There are a lot of artists that live here, visual artists, musicians, dancers. I've had the pleasure of meeting Charles White, an African-American artist who is known around the world as for his portraitures of the Black figure. In the days that I grew up, I very seldom saw Black people painted in a positive way. He was a resident of Altadena. It just so happened that one of my favorite authors was a sci-fi writer, Octavia Butler. And little did I know when I was reading Octavia Butler that she was a resident of Altadena as well. So it's just the type of place that you just meet some very interesting people. I remember when I could not have bought a house in parts of Los Angeles. Well, because Altadena was the type of community that was more welcoming. I was able to buy a house here. My mom, she was able to buy a house. And I discovered over the course of years that Black folks have been here for quite a while. When I talk to people, strangers, I don't even know them, but we meet and find out that we both live in Altadena. One of the things I ask is, what are you doing to protect your health? I mean, what are you doing to stay sane? Some people get so wrapped up in taking care of insurance and those things that we need to take care of that I think they're sort of neglecting their own mental health. So that's one of the things I do when I meet my neighbors is just talk to them, find out what they're doing, find out how they're doing. One of the things I look at with this situation, people that survive this and are able to recover and move back here will one day look at this and see something beneficial in it, in that they were able to get that life that they thought they'd never get. They would be able to get that back. And in a way, tragedies can either break you or help make you stronger. And so this is just one of those, and you learn and keep going if you're smart.
For nearly 100 years, locals have known Altadena as a gem, a place where diversity, artists, and community could thrive. But it never really gained national attention until the Eaton Fire nearly wiped it off the map. Now the community is in an existential test to preserve what is left and recreate the haven that was destroyed. From LA Times Studios, this is Rebuilding LA. I'm Kate Cagle. As people came to Southern California during the Great Migration of the 1920s and 30s, Altadena was a destination for Black families, in particular, a neighborhood in the northwest part of town called the Meadows. It was one of the few places not subject to redlining, that restrictive mortgage policy that prevented people of color from owning properties throughout most of Los Angeles. Once the Fair Housing Act became law in the late 60s, the Black population in Altadena surged, accounting for 43% of its population by 1980. Artists and creatives flocked to the neighborhoods, from Charles White to Kentura Davis, the daughter of the artist you heard from at the top of this episode. Kenny Arts calls his daughter, known for her drawings and textiles, the real deal. Though a lot of Black families have moved elsewhere in recent years, the town that stood just before the fires was recognized and loved for being extremely diverse, full of artists, musicians, scientists, and teachers who came from all over to live in a place that residents have nicknamed Shangri-La.
Altadena has a special sauce, and if you unpack that a little bit, you have the Jet Propulsion labs in the neighborhood, so you got a bunch of retired burnout rocket scientists. And you've got a lot of bohemian folks and people of all different races. And it's those things, that mashup of different people who, rather than fear the different, embrace the different in a way that's made it such a special place.
That's resident and architect Stephen Lewis, who we'll be talking to in just a few minutes. He's one of many who've jumped in to offer guidance and help to rebuild Altadena and restore what's been lost. There's actually a lot of good ideas being discussed right now, so bear with us. This episode is a little on the longer side, but we wanted to include it all. Later on, we will hear from Alex Athenson. He co-founded the Foothill Catalog Foundation with his wife. Inspired by the old kit homes from Sears, the Foothill Catalog aims to ease the burden of rebuilding. But first, we talk to local architects Stephen Lewis and Jessica Orlando. Lewis runs the Thinking Leadership Consultancy. He's also on the National Leadership Council for National Association of Minority Architects, or NOMA. He's also lived in Altadena since 1980. Jessica Orlando is with the firm Perkins & Will and serves on the board of directors for the Pasadena and Foothill chapter of the American Institute of Architects. Stephen, let's start with you. Tell me about January 7th, 8th, 9th. Were you in town when everything happened?
Indeed, I was. We were at home. The winds had been blowing all day. Edison had turned off the power in our neighborhood. At that point, I looked out the window upstairs and I saw the mountain on fire, and I saw the front line of the fire moving down really rapidly. And from that distance and at that scale, to be able to perceive that movement of the front end of the fire meant that it was really coming fast. And winds were clocked at 90 to 100 miles an hour throughout the course of this catastrophe. So we left. But still, we'd seen fires in the past, and never had they jumped over into the kind of horizontal neighborhood fabric. So we just figured, we'll go down and come back tomorrow, and, things should be okay. So we left my cousin's place really early. We tiptoed out and we got in the car and we drove up and we turned onto our street. Immediately, there were trees and houses that were burning. The wind was blowing like with blowtorch embers flying everywhere. And it was just at that point, I think it was like fight or flight took over. And at that point, I looked at Jill and I was like, let's go in and get what we can, but we got to get out of here quick because this might be the last time. And I learned later that firefighters actually showed up trying to put out the fires across the street. And when they weren't able to do that, they noticed what was happening behind them on our property, and they were able to put that out. So we were, in that sense, very lucky. It got really close. So, after that, it was a matter of, how do we regroup? And we're still regrouping.
Talk to me about that feeling, though, that they were able to save your house. And you talked about how long you've been a part of this community. I'm sure you must be heartbroken for your neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. Before the fire, maybe there might have been 2 or 3 neighbors on the block who I knew names of and maybe knew casually. Once we all got together the day after, we formed a text string from everybody on the block who wanted to participate. And now we know each other much better. It's that's the silver lining. I think it's really brought community on a macro and on a micro level much, much closer together.
Jessica, you do not live in Altadena, but you are close. I want to get into your Ask an Architect program in just a minute, but can you just talk about why you felt it was important to get involved in this effort to rebuild Altadena?
So I am a newer resident of Pasadena, but we actually live up on the top of Poppy Peak Hill, which overlooks the mountains. And so we watched the fire burn on the night of January 7th. So while we were very fortunately not directly impacted, it was very obvious to us that it was going to create just absolute devastation. So aside from it being, the community that me and my family live in, as people who care about the built environment, but also the people who occupy it, for us, it's just absolutely critical that we could mobilize and be a resource to people who have never had to approach anything like this before.
Jessica, even if you don't consider the cost, building a home is very daunting. Most homeowners don't have experience with this. How are you helping people get through this and see that it can be possible? What kind of tips do you have for people that you can share here?
Mm-hmm. So that was one of the first questions that we really sought to tackle. I think folks, aside from the trauma of going through this experience, it's obviously just overwhelming. It's a huge amount of information to try to digest. And so the Ask an Architect program is something that our volunteer group mobilized on essentially from day one after the fires. And it's a program that operates both virtually and in person. Folks can sign up for a free consultation with a licensed architect here in California. And they're really here to answer any questions that you have about process, about how to work with an architect or a contractor, really just help to provide the confidence that is needed to be able to make decisions and move forward. We're not here to sell anything or to provide design services. Really, it's just here to act as a public service and really support folks as they, navigate this very complex process. So we've had the ability to connect with about 270 community members so far, in a variety of formats. Some folks, they just want a phone call. Some folks, they say, hey, can you come meet me, we're at my home property, so we can take a look at it and figure out what I can rebuild, So our volunteers have been amazing. We've got about 150 licensed architects working with us through the program.
And Jessica, if rebuilders are listening right now, how can they find you guys?
Just on our website, aiapf.org, and there's a tab for our wildfire response, and you can sign up right there. And we try to get back to everybody within 48 hours to match you with an architect partner so that they can answer whatever questions you might have. aiapf.org.
We've heard various estimates of how long it will take to rebuild these communities, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Give us the wide view. Where are we in this moment right now, about 6 months out of the actual event?
As you were saying, no one's gone through this before, right? And so if you're a layperson and you're now faced with this prospect of having to rebuild a home, you might just assume that it's a simple A to B to C process. And I think where Jessica and the AIA, which is also my chapter, and NOMA have been helpful is in educating our neighbors about, just what that process entails and get their expectations geared accordingly, that this is going to take time, not only for the whole neighborhood to come back, which is certainly a 5 to 10 year proposition, but how they themselves will come back and what that kind of process and timeline looks like.
I would add that I think when we hear the estimates of the 5 to 10 years, that's often based on past events, right? We hear about the fires in Paradise, the Marshall fires in Colorado. We're trying to find some reference point, right, that we can work from. I would say, though, the uniqueness of this event is that this is a highly dense metropolitan area, and I think that both means that it's horribly tragic and devastating event because of the destruction and where it was, but it also means that we have a lot more resources and drive to move this process much more quickly. So I think one of the examples of that is that the phase 2 debris clearance is moving very rapidly. So we look at the Lahaina fires; it took them about 18 months to get through debris clearance. I'm understanding that we might be done in the next month or two in Altadena, which would be amazing, right? We have essentially a clean slate to start from within 7 or 8 months of the event. So I think that there are great minds, great innovators who are pushing to make this happen as quickly as possible. And I think that there are folks who want to make it happen fast, but we are here for the folks who are trying to figure out if that's what they want to do too.
Jessica, what do you think is the biggest need right now, and what are you doing to help meet that?
I think a lot of what we saw in the beginning, those first few months, was just trying to understand the barrage of information that was out there. I think folks were totally overwhelmed. They had no idea what to expect. But now that we're shifting, I think Steve mentioned that folks are understanding maybe how much money they're getting from insurance, what they can afford. They're making the decision if they want to stay or not, or if they want to sell. So we're now shifting into the mode of kind of the practical side of redevelopment. So how do you work with a contractor? How do you select an architect? How do you go through permitting? How do you work with the local authorities? So I think that we're kind of shifting from that more immediate need of just, what can I do? How do I approach this? Who do I need to contact? To, okay, I think I know what I want to do. How do I go about doing that? And, we know that that's going to continue to evolve as the recovery goes forward as well.
What about you, Stephen? What are you hearing? Because you're in such an interesting position. You're not just helping, you're in it. What do people need right now?
Yeah. There are different constituents, the range of ages, cultural backgrounds, aspirations. And so I think the way we start is with the question and not the answer. We try to interrogate the situation and the people, and then be able to pivot to addressing those particular needs. I will say that Altadena in 1970 was approximately 43% Black population. It was one of the few places in the Los Angeles area that was not redlined. And so Black families, mostly middle-class families, were able to buy property there and set their roots down. And over time, their children and their grandchildren have formed these sort of family enclaves, often on the same street. And as a result, many families lost multiple homes. So there's Lake Avenue, which is the main north-south commercial corridor, which burned terribly. But it's also the kind of unofficial dividing line between East Altadena and West Altadena. And the concentration of Black residents, which today amounts to 18%, largely is in that area. And 60% of those residents are seniors. So that really creates a situation that requires the utmost sensitivity, because you've got those firebrands that are determined to come back, even if they're in their 70s right now. But you have a lot of people who are looking at, as Jessica mentioned, what the options are. Or I could sell my property. With those proceeds, I could have a nice, horizon that I can go to. And so we're finding all different kinds, and we have to be open and receptive and non-judgmental about each as we encounter them. But encountering these individuals, these residents that, you might see on the street and just strike up a conversation, or a Jack in the Box or whatever, every person is unique, and every person has their life, and their life has been turned upside down. And so it requires a great deal of empathy and a great deal of emotional stamina, because, if you're an empath like I am, you sort of absorb that trauma. And it just can be overwhelming at a certain point. But, then you look and say, well, at least I still have a house to go back to. We're still not back in it. It's still being cleaned.
So what's at stake for this community? I mean, we talk so much about the onus on the individual homeowner and the decisions that they have to make. But at the same time, this is happening to thousands of people at the same time who are each trying to make this individual decision.
Well, and I mean, Steve and I have been working in close proximity for the duration of this response, but so I'm curious to your response. But the one kind of, I guess, dose of reality that I think is important to talk about with people is that it will not be the same. This community will not be the same as what it was. It's going to be something different. That doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It doesn't mean that it's, we're not going to like it, or it's not going to be something unique and interesting and amazing that, similar to what it used to be. But I think aligning that expectation is really important, that it's not going to have the same kind of character. But I think the flip side of that is also that there is an element of empowerment here too, right? Like the people who stay here, it's the community is created of those people and those families and those community institutions. So, trying to find ways to empower those people to have a say in what, comes next, I think is really important. One area that, we're really interested in is these commercial corridors, North Lake, North Fair Oaks, what those look like moving forward. The single family residences, for the most part, they're going to be built back similarly in scale and, type to what was there before. But we also can't forget about the community fabric too, right? The schools and the daycare centers and the grocery stores and the coffee shops and the bars and, all of that stuff that made it a community, all of these artist networks that were there. So I think that that's a conversation that's really just kind of starting right now about how, we build that fabric back. And, so we're hoping that we can help guide that conversation and, make sure that folks have a say in what that looks like.
It's confronting that reality that Jessica laid out, which I believe is true. It won't be the same place. But you often hear people who are longtime residents talk about what a special place Altadena is. And if you unpack that a little bit, you have the Jet Propulsion labs in the neighborhood. So you got a bunch of retired burnout rocket scientists. You've got the Zorthian Ranch, which is WPA era art quality. And you've got a lot of bohemian folks and people of all different races. And we actually walk in the neighborhood, to the coffee shop or whatever. And so it's a bit of an anomaly as far as Southern California living goes. And it's those things, that mashup of different people who, rather than fear the different, embrace the different in a way that's made it such a special place. And we fear that if, whether through speculation or whether through just people who may have had Altadena on their radar for a while and want to come in, that the demographic is going to continue to evolve in a manner of gentrification. And with it will come perhaps a tipping point where that precious preserved identity, which we're all trying to figure out how to hold on to throughout this turbulence, may flip into another place. So I think part of what I'm interested in is, in a way, codifying that special sauce. What makes Altadena special? And that's really achieved through just informal interviews with a whole range of people who've been in the neighborhood, and try to really hold that up as part of the guiding light, the non-physical rebuild, the ethereal rebuild,
Well, and you guys aren't elected officials, but I'm curious if you have seen solutions around this affordability issue. Have you seen any kind of solution that is bridging the gap for these folks who do want to come back but simply cannot afford $1 million house?
So there's an organization, a nonprofit called Green Line, and they're acting in a way like a community land trust, where if people are going to sell, they're encouraging them to sell to them, and they will hold that property and maintain its affordability into the future, so that that family or any other family of similar economic means will have a shot. And so we're very much in favor of those strategies. We're very much opposed to larger developers coming in trying to buy up, contiguous parcels that they can then impose their cookie cutter architecture on. Again, another special feature of Altadena was the variety of homes, the prevalent styles of homes.
One of the great things that is coming out of this crisis is some solutions that we haven't tried before. So LA County they've just implemented their pre-approved standard plan program. So this means now that there are plans that you don't have to go through a full permit process for. So architects can submit these plans, get them pre-approved. Often they can be delivered at a lower cost for folks because it's standardized and it's already been developed. And there's an organization, the Foothill Catalog Foundation, that's they got the first pre-approved plan. They're moving forward with construction on the first home already. So it will not only expedite the process, but it can also drive down cost for design and construction because it's standardized.
Yes, and we will be talking to Foothill Catalog a little bit later in this exact episode.
I think we mentioned prefab and modular too. A lot of folks are looking at that as an option. Traditionally, they've been used more for accessory dwelling units, but they're now looking at implementing the same principles for primary structures as well. So like the Sunset Mesa Collective is looking at that option for prefabbing their designs as well. So I think I mentioned earlier that, being in this, great brain trust of Los Angeles, folks are putting their thinking caps on and driving innovation to try to address all of the multifaceted nature of this problem, right? Cost, time, just the pressure of getting it done, and helping people who are in dire need. So I think we're coming up with solutions that can help to solve this problem. And, in all honesty, we're hoping that some of this will bleed over beyond just the fire response, but also to help the broader housing crisis in general. If we can increase production of prefab and modular homes and drive down costs for production of housing units, then that would be amazing to help solve the broader issues that are here in LA.
Tell me about some of the creative solutions that you're already hearing from folks on how they plan to rebuild faster or cheaper.
A lot of folks are looking at putting ADUs on their property or building an ADU first. It's really the fastest way that you can get back to your property and then look at rebuilding a primary structure. But we've kind of heard of everything in between too. So, we've even talked with folks who said, I only have $500,000, which won't, support the build for, the size of the home that I want. So they're talking about phased construction. So can you build a primary structure that's a 2-bed, 2-bathroom, and you can go ahead and add a bedroom on later, so you can work with your architect to think through that process. We're hearing a lot of folks, they because of their, financial challenges, they actually do foresee that, either having a duplex, some folks are looking at duplexes, or an ADU where they could actually have that as a revenue generating scheme for them. So if, you build more than one unit on your property, then you can have a revenue stream that is then supporting you financially as you're, paying off whatever financing you have. So I think there are a lot of really creative ideas out there about how to support folks financially. It's also important to note that there are funding opportunities available. So there are SBA loans that folks can get to help with their rebuilds well outside of their insurance. So I think the main thing that we're trying to tell folks too is that, there are a lot of pathways open to you. It's not just your insurance and then you're done. There are a lot of different ways to think about this and what you can build now versus later. So, we're really here to help consider all of those options and think creatively.
And it's nice to hear you talk about solutions that might come out of this, that might be able to apply to future communities and future disasters. What do you think, Stephen? Is there innovation happening here that might translate to other communities?
Oh, absolutely. I was driving the president of National NOMA through the neighborhood, and as we were driving down south on Fair Oaks above Altadena Drive, we noticed a structure set back on a property, and we stopped, backed up, and went up the driveway. And there was a 78-year-old white guy named Ronald, who was watering down his property. And he had this nano nest prefab, modern white framed, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, temporary ADU. They craned it in, boop, boop, dropped it down, and he's getting it ready, So he's still going to build back his primary residence, but this allows him, and he was vehement about wanting to get back and wave that flag about to his neighbors, like, you guys can come back and you need to come back. So there's a real spirit there that I really, appreciate.
Jessica, the other big issue is sustainability. Altadena is in a fire zone. How are people thinking about that as they rebuild?
Absolutely. I don't want to call it a silver lining, but I think, the kind of unfortunate side of this is that it brings a lot of awareness to the vulnerabilities that we all have as a community. So we've heard a huge number of folks who are interested in, if they are going to rebuild in the same place, what strategies can they put in place? And we've partnered with USGBC California, they've created a resilient rebuilding guide that's really robust. So highly recommend that folks check that out. And that's where we point our community members to. But any architect can also walk you through the options for different levels of resilience as well. There are some very basic strategies that are really cost effective, but make a huge difference. Very simple things from the type of roof you have to the type of exterior cladding. A lot of homes that burned, unfortunately, were, wood shingles and, very flammable materials. So there's some very straightforward decisions that you can make early on in the design process that won't hugely impact your bottom line, that can really help to protect you in the future. So, we're glad that this is kind of forcing some of that conversation. We're obviously big advocates to try and prevent this type of disaster from happening again in the future.
Yes, Stephen, I'm curious your perspective as a local. We've done a number of episodes already about the fact that Southern California has a propensity to burn. This is not the first major fire in our area, and it won't be the last. Do you have any pause about the community coming back so close to a wildfire zone? And do you feel like there's enough being done to stop the next disaster?
Well, Jessica, I think you would agree that when the wind is blowing a fire at 90 miles an hour, I don't care what your house is made out of. If the wind targets your property, there's no saving that. I mean, it's just, with climate change, the question to your point, Kate, is, given climate change, what is the propensity now going forward for this act, which we would say is a freak, condition, happening more regularly?
The one thing I do remind folks of, though, is that, much of what burned was 60 to 100 years old. A lot of it was very old construction, most of it very flammable. There was a lot of vegetation around. There's going to be a very big shift in what will be rebuilt. Even just bringing everything up to modern building codes is going to make a very dramatic change in the ability for something like this to happen again in the future. But yeah, to Stephen's point, we know that this is not the last event that we will need to contend with. So I think as much as we can do now to plan for the future is really the best path forward.
What is giving you hope right now as your community rebuilds?
It's the spirit of Altadena, the spirit of the people, the fact that this disaster has brought us all closer together, and we find some strength in that bond among us, and that's what I'm most hopeful about.
What about you, Jessica?
Yeah, I would say it's twofold. The first, I've mentioned the amazing minds that are at work here in LA trying to solve all of the different challenges that we have. It's really impressive to see just the dedication and effort that people are willing to put forward, including the hundreds of volunteers that I'm working with on a daily basis. We would not be able to do what we're doing without them. And so I think there is that small silver lining that, for better or worse, these folks will have the opportunity to say, you know what, I get to create something that's truly mine, right? Go through this process and have ownership of it and really, make it something that's special and unique to me. So, we're here for that and, so excited to support that vision.
Architects Stephen Lewis and Jessica Orlando both are consulting with residents of Altadena about how they might rebuild and return to their neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't go away. After the break, we are talking to architect Alex Athenson, who's come up with some plans to help people rebuild simply with blueprints literally influenced by a Sears catalog. We'll be right back.
Once seeing that the fire was coming, my immediate instinct was to evacuate my parents and my family because it was 4:30 in the morning, so a lot of our neighbors were still asleep. I just started knocking and kicking doors in, and we made it out in the blink of time.
Sergio Lambert, a union carpenter, lost his home in the Altadena fire, escaping with his family just minutes before flames engulfed his whole street. Sergio has promised his mother Dallas that he will rebuild their home with his own hands.
So I recently just graduated valedictorian of my apprenticeship program here at the Carpenter Southwest Local 661. Frankly, the Carpenter Union has truly saved my life and just allowed me to be somebody that my mother can truly be proud of now.
To hear Sergio's story, stay tuned for the end of the episode.
During one of the most severe windstorms Southern California experienced in more than a decade, the Palisades and Eaton fires ignited, leaving heartbreaking losses in our communities. Now, as we build back, we're building stronger, cleaner, and more resilient. In communities most vulnerable to dangerous weather conditions and wildfires, Southern California Edison is placing power lines underground, hardening the electric system by installing wires with protective coating, and adding advanced technology to help keep communities safe. So when Southern California faces the next storm, the next most severe event,
helicopters, structures adjacent here at Piper Road.
We'll be ready. Learn more at sce.com/disaster recovery.
When a wildfire takes so much, it's hard to know where to start. But in neighborhoods across Los Angeles, something powerful is taking shape. People are rebuilding, not just homes, but strength, stability, and a deeper sense of community. Based in Southern California, Axos Bank believes in that kind of resilience and proudly stands with regional communities. Axos's construction mortgage program is here to support those ready to rebuild, on their terms, on their timeline. Because starting over isn't easy, but with the right support, it can lead to something even stronger. With one-time close loans, interest-only payments during construction, and financing for everything from full rebuilds to major renovations, Axos offers fast, flexible options built to match the home and future you're envisioning. A safer home, a stronger community, a future rebuilt together. If you're ready to take that first step, visit Axos Bank at axosbank.com/rebuild. That's axosbank.com/rebuild. Loan approval is subject to credit approval and program guidelines. Not all loan programs are available in all states for all loan amounts. Interest rate and program terms are subject to change without notice. Mortgage, home equity, and credit products are offered through Axos Bank. Deposit products are offered through Axos Bank. Axos Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Axos Bank, NMLS number 524995.
We are back with Rebuilding LA. I'm Kate Cagle. We have Alex Athenson in the studio with us. He's the president and co-founder of the Foothill Catalog Foundation. It's a nonprofit he established with his wife right after the fires to provide Altadena residents with simple, affordable building plans. Not custom designs, but designs that do reflect the architectural diversity of the neighborhood with Spanish styles, craftsmen, and your classic ranch. Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I know that you don't live in Altadena, but nearby. So let's just start with your story. Take me to January. What was your experience with the fire?
Sure. So my wife and I were a half block south of the Altadena border. We'd been there for 5 years. And on the night of January 7th, like everyone else, we were watching what was going on in the Palisades and really watching with horror as what was happening to our city. And then as we were both coming back from our jobs, we're both architects here in the city, we heard about the fire in Eaton Canyon that had sprung up. By the time we had gotten back to our home in northwest Pasadena, again, about a half block south of the Altadena border, the San Gabriels that we could see out our window were completely on fire. So we knew we had to leave at that point. We already had friends calling us from all over the city asking, are you guys okay? Do you need a place to stay? And we ended up in Valley Village with our to-go bags, which for me didn't include any underwear. With my wife, I think she had about 8 pairs of jeans, so we were not prepared at all. And I think like a lot of people in Altadena and Pasadena area were doing this as a precautionary measure and didn't really look back at our home that this might be the last time we see it. And so when we woke up early the morning of the 8th, we were watching the news coverage and seeing the flames creep closer and closer. There was a reporter standing on Montana Street, which was our street, with homes fully engulfed behind her. So at that point, Cynthia and I, we turned off the TV. We didn't need to see our neighborhood burn down on live television. So for about 3 hours, we were kind of in limbo, not really knowing what would happen, but really assuming the worst. And around 12:30, we had a friend driving around, checking on his own family's properties. His in-laws' home off of Lake Avenue in Altadena that they had lived in for 37 years had burned completely to the ground. And he drove past our place and sent us an apocalyptic-looking picture of the home still standing, but with flames and clouds of smoke in the vicinity and nearby. So at that point, we knew our home still stood, and thankfully it survived. But those few hours kind of watching the flames creep closer and closer and that feeling that we might not have a place to go back to, something I'll definitely never forget.
Wow. Well, it makes sense why you would want to be involved in something like the Foothill Catalog Foundation. And I want to get into that in just a moment. But first, can you describe the architectural history of Altadena? What kind of homes were there?
Sure. So what really makes Altadena unique and what I think makes it special is its diversity. It's really well known for all of these people from different ethnicities, backgrounds, means, all living in harmony in the same streets, the same neighborhoods. And that's really reflected in its architectural character as well. You have your small craftsman bungalows, your modest Spanish Mission Revival homes, but you also have your larger mid-century modern homes or your American Colonial Revival homes. So these all, again, the architecture exists in harmony just as the people do. And you have your landscapers, your artists, your scientists all living in the same neighborhoods as your tech moguls, your executives, your celebrities. And this harmony and diversity makes up the character and the identity of Altadena. So it's this real mix that lives together in unity. And after the fires, that's what's at risk of being lost.
So what is the Foothill Catalog and what are you offering?
So the Foothill Catalog Foundation, we are a nonprofit organization that was founded by my wife and I, two licensed architects again, who went through this trauma and really trying to find a way to make rebuilding as attainable for everyone as possible, not just people with large homes, people with the means, with the insurance coverage, but for the rest of the community, the multi-generational homeowners, the young couples, the elderly couples who are looking to rebuild modest homes in modest neighborhoods. So the Foothill Catalog Foundation, our mission is to develop a catalog of pre-approved home designs that allow residents to expeditiously, resiliently, and affordably rebuild their homes that also respect the identity and retain the heritage of the place of Altadena, and doing so as a renaissance of the Sears catalog model, which many people know. Sears, Roebuck, and many other companies in the 20th century published catalogs where you could flip through a series of pre-designed, pre-engineered home styles and effectively order them out of a catalog.
Houses?
Yeah, exactly. Have you not heard of the Sears catalog?
Well, I know about the Sears catalog. I'm old enough to have seen a Sears catalog, but I don't remember it having houses in it. Give me the history.
Yeah, I'll break it down. So, so Sears, Roebuck in the early 20th century, what they developed and what many other companies developed was publishing pre-designed, pre-engineered home styles, ranging in a variety of different architectural languages and sizes and configurations that essentially you could order out of the catalog like you would a toaster, like you would any other good from Sears. And you would pay for the plans, you would pay for the materials, and they would ship it directly to your door. And many times either you would build it or your local contractor or your friends would help assemble your home. And that was a model of how modest working class families didn't go through custom design processes to build their homes, but effectively had made quality building in the 20th century accessible for many people and essentially to build the American dream, right? And even in Altadena, in the San Gabriel Valley, a lot of our homes and neighborhoods that we know and love were built out of catalogs. And so we feel that this mechanism, this renaissance of the Sears catalog in the Foothill catalog can be a real way to make rebuilding attainable for as many families as possible.
This sounds like something that you had thought about before. Did you see this as an opportunity then to bring back this idea?
It was always something that was on my mind and aware of and in awe of what impact the Sears catalog had on our country, really. My great-grandfather in northern Illinois built his own house in the 50s out of a Sears catalog home. And he lived there for 70 years until the day he died. So I think it just sort of clicked when after the fires, and my wife and I were sleeping on an air mattress in our friend's living room, feeling really fortunate to have had our home survived, but really trying to figure out a way to make rebuilding that, as architects, we know is a difficult process, and especially in California.
So walk me through as if I was a client.
You're not going to be able to obtain a custom design. You're not going to be able to choose the size of your closets or I want this door to be a little bit bigger. But if we can develop a series of designs, and our goal is to target 10 initial designs and then scale over the course of the next few months up to 50 potentially, is to provide that variety. And so they're non-custom designs. They're stock plans that are pre-approved, that are kind of set in place. But as long as we can meet 90 to 95% of people's needs in terms of size, configuration, and have different style options that reflect the identity and the character of the neighborhoods that were lost before, a homeowner can skip through and not have to go through an often arduous custom design process. If a design is pre-approved in LA County, you'll be able to skip through a large portion of the permitting process, which is often really cumbersome and time-consuming as well.
Just to be clear, these are pre-approved designs, but this is not your cookie cutter home.
Exactly. And I think our focus, really two core tenets of our mission of the Foothill Catalog is not only to retain the people, but to retain the place and to retain that identity, that look, that feel, the palpable heritage of Altadena that's so special.
So what has been the process of working with the county on this?
So that's actually been, even in these early stages, one of our biggest accomplishments has been this public-private cooperation where LA County and their whole team has been really open to listen to the community of what is needed or what innovations of this process can be streamlined to make this disaster recovery effort more efficient. At the end of April, it resulted in the launch of opening up the pre-approval process for LA County, which essentially separates your non-site specific plan checks and approvals with your site-specific approvals so that LA County can review a set of architectural, a set of structural, a set of energy calculations and drawings that don't have a lot or a site or even a client in place. And so by front-loading a lot of that permitting efforts, by the time a homeowner actually selects a pre-approved design, they can be so much further in the process and, again, be as close as possible to construction.
So it sounds like you're still in the process of getting some of these plans approved. So there might be some incentive for homeowners to wait.
So we are working as fast as we can to pre-approve as many plans as possible. And that's been, as a nonprofit organization, that's been the lift, is trying to aggregate the resources and the capacity to design, first starting with 10 plans, but then eventually getting to 50 designs is our ultimate goal to provide that variety for homeowners. So the pre-approval process launched at the end of April. And as of this last week, the Foothill Catalog pre-approved the first design in LA County history. And that was the Lewis. And it was a 1,260 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath craftsman design, modeled actually after a home on Lewis Avenue that was lost in the fires.
For folks who aren't architecturally savvy, can you describe the Lewis and the craftsman style and what makes a home a craftsman?
The craftsman style really comes out of the arts and crafts movement of the late 19th century, early 20th century. And it's really iconic, actually, of the Southern California region, but in Pasadena, Altadena specifically. So you have a lot of, typically in that era, you would have a lot of wood timbers. You would have shingle siding, long horizontal eaves.
Sounds flammable.
Exactly, right? So the challenge with craftsman style and that aesthetic and that language is how do we translate that to a 21st century resilient style and version of that? So with the Lewis, this first pre-approved design, what we're utilizing is the technology of the building industry to provide non-combustible substitutes for cedar siding, for wood timbering, so that we can articulate the same look and feel of a craftsman home, but to meet the very high fire severity standards that go above and beyond the resiliency of the standard building code. And so by getting this first plan, the Lewis pre-approved, in a craftsman style and having it meet those resiliency standards was a huge milestone for us and really a proof of concept that it is possible to have both. It is possible with the intelligence of the 21st century to incorporate the look and feel and the character of the 20th century. And we're also working with Habitat for Humanity in San Gabriel Valley, who is immediately taking the Lewis and is going to utilize that craftsman design, a similar Spanish design, and a similar California ranch, and are going to immediately start using those designs for over 22 families to rebuild in Altadena.
Let's talk about cost, because affordability is such a huge issue. Specifically in Altadena, many people found themselves underinsured, or maybe that was a generational home that had been paid off, so they didn't even have insurance on it. How is this helping people who might be in a sticky financial situation rebuild? Right.
So off the bat, typically architectural design fees, going through a custom design process, what's typical is about 10 to 15% of the construction cost. Say you're building on $1 million square foot or $1 million home, that's the construction cost. typically 100,000 to 150,000. That could be your design fees. And similarly, in the permitting process, the costs of permitting and usually the length of time that takes. As an architect, I know all too well that can take months and often years to even permit a building. So by providing non-custom solutions and as a nonprofit, by being able to leverage philanthropy and donations to develop this catalog that can, again, give homeowners a head start of moving past the custom design phase, moving as far as possible through permitting to not only save money, but to save time and emotional bandwidth as well. And that non-custom, that catalog model also imbibes a real predictability in each of these phases as well. So if the design is predictable, then the permitting process can be predictable as well for LA County. And then also on the back end, when it comes to construction, by creating a predictable design that builders can vet and can really plan for, that isn't going to be changed, that isn't going to be customized, they're able to make a lot more realistic assumptions and lower their costs and also scale their operations to incorporate repeatability, economy of scale, to bring that cost per square foot down from sort of the astronomical numbers that we've been seeing.
Now, you're still rebuilding in a fire zone. Obviously, all of this will be up to modern codes, but how have you thought about sustainability in your design?
Yeah, so what the Foothill Catalog really wants to emphasize is that quality design and quality construction and affordability, attainability should not be mutually exclusive. So we are not only designing to the very stringent 2025 standards that the California Building Code, which is one of the most stringent in the country in terms of sustainability, resiliency, we're rebuilding these neighborhoods with such a greater sense of safety and of intelligence as well. But what is really important to us is to go above and beyond that and to design to, with all of our catalog homes, to the very high fire hazard zone, severity zone standards, whether a homeowner is in that zone or not. And trying to, again, create that predictability in the design so that the cost of creating resilient solutions is not out of reach.
So tell me about the software that's making this possible.
So this is actually a really exciting partnership. And as I was talking to collaboration and the power of that, Autodesk has found the Foothill Catalog as they were looking to support the LA fire rebuild in whatever way they could. And they've been supporting efforts to rebuild Notre Dame in Paris. They were instrumental in helping rebuild parts of Ukraine. And by providing resources, funding, and their software specifically, enables us as architects to actually scale from one design to Lewis up to 50 within a matter of months, which otherwise would be impossible. So,
because I was picturing you with like a ruler and grid paper, and
if I could, I love to draw that way, but to increase our efficiency and to also, like I said, to meet the 21st century kind of standards of efficiency, Autodesk has been incredible with what they've been able to do for us.
What kind of reaction are you getting from the community?
It's been incredible, actually, the support we've gotten from the community. And being a member of the Altadena community myself, it's really spoken volumes to how people look at the Foothill Catalog and what we're trying to develop as really matching this shared community vision of what they think Altadena was and can be again. And I think the Foothill Catalog being one of these mechanisms that can help retain as many people as possible, retain the place and that feel of our home as much as possible. That's been our greatest strength is lifting people up and giving people the hope that this is possible. You can do this. You can rebuild this place that we all know and love. It's not gone forever. It doesn't have to be.
Right now you're talking about having 50 different pre-approved plans. When you think about where you want to see Altadena be in 5 to 7 years, how many homes do you hope to build out of this catalog?
It could be hundreds. I mean, hopefully we are providing enough variety that for who it makes sense to. I mean, we're one of these resources out there. A lot of people will build their custom homes and build something completely new. But I think with 50 designs, that will offer enough variety in size and style, can really maintain the diversity of these neighborhoods and the eclecticism that's really identifiable of the region and capture that sense of place.
Do you think that this is something that other communities could look? I know it's very early, right? You're just getting started with these pre-approved plans. Do you think that this is something that is scalable, or other communities that endure this kind of disaster that they might be able to apply to their communities as well?
Yeah, that's what's really exciting about what this can be a showcase for, of what the catalog model, what it was so successful at doing in the 20th century to really build these iconic neighborhoods that we all know and love. And now in the 21st century, in this disaster relief scenario, to show how we can recapture that spirit and that attainability and that equity in the rebuilding effort in Altadena, it can be a real proof of concept for how the catalog model can serve immediately even the Palisades rebuild, as we're having more and more conversations with homeowners there who are looking to the catalog model as an option of, hey, this can work for my neighborhood, or this would be great for our community as well. And even talking with FEMA officials, they are really excited about what we're developing here in Southern California, because FEMA is flying all over the country, and they're going to Hazard, Kentucky, or they're going to North Carolina to assess damage there. And there isn't the same spotlight that there is in Los Angeles. So they're really excited about this model, as we are, of not only rebuilding our home, that Cynthia and I, where we live, but it's serving as a model for future disaster relief efforts, and even efforts to rebuild more equitably and affordable housing in general.
If people are listening and interested, and at least maybe even just want to take a peek at the designs that you've come up with, where can they find you?
So our website is foothillcatalog.org. Follow us on Instagram at the Foothill Catalog. On our website, we have about 30 to 35 initial concept designs that were actually submitted from a variety of different designers from across the region and from across the country that now we're taking in and developing internally to use as the basis of the ideas that will eventually make up the Foothill Catalog, these 50 designs. So it's a real community effort, and it's really symbolic of the community rebuilding itself. And for LA architects, designers, building professionals to be able to give back to their home as well. So on our website and on our Instagram, you'll be able to see a lot of those designs. And even by the week, we're coming out with more and then also getting feedback, too, from the community of what they like, what they're looking for, and what solutions can be most effective to rebuild Altadena the right way.
All right, that was Alex Athenson. He's the co-founder of the Foothill Catalog Foundation. Thank you so much. This has been really fascinating, and thank you for all your work to rebuild the community.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Appreciate you having me.
That's it for Rebuilding LA. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. Now, before we thank our crew, here's a word from our sponsor.
Sergio Lambert had to evacuate his mother and father from their Altadena home within 10 minutes. They escaped with only the clothes they were wearing. As a leader in the Los Angeles Carpenters Union, Sergio went to work helping other members, as well as other families in Altadena, who had lost their homes. Rebuild SoCal Partnership recently talked to Sergio and his mother Dulles about their loss and about Sergio's determination to rebuild their home with his own hands.
Once seeing that the fire was coming, my immediate instinct was to evacuate my parents and my family, because it was 4:30 in the morning, so a lot of our neighbors were still asleep. I just started knocking and kicking doors in, and we made it out in the blink of time. Yes, it was a state of fear, but more so it was a state of what's my next best move for me and my family's sake. And unfortunately, the next time that I saw my house, it was strictly ashes.
I did a dual celebration because we celebrated Christmas and Kwanzaa. We baked rum cake, and that was a tradition in our family stemming from Costa Rica and Jamaica.
A family favorite.
I've tried not to come up here too often because it's very difficult. It is. And I need closure. I think that helps me to just see that it's no longer here. But the good memories are there. That's what keeps us afloat.
And though it's hard to be up here and we lost everything, we have some neighbors that live right around the corner that lost their lives.
We have lived there for over 35 years. It's a very diverse neighborhood, lots of African-American families. And we got to know people from walking. We were walkers around here. This neighborhood was, we walking our dogs, we walking the children, so very close-knit. My understanding is that a lot of our neighbors did not have fire insurance, and our hearts go out to them.
When I lost my house, the Carpenters Union is right there immediately helping us out with water, food, shelter, and personally, they helped me out with the $5,000 donation to get me and my family back on my feet.
Josh Raper, Regional Manager of the Western States Council of Carpenters, which represents thousands of union carpenters in Southern California, saw immediately what was needed.
We are a union that fights for all of our members, as well as the community. What really makes us proud is that Carpenter Union locals from around the country pool their resources to support these union brothers and sisters in need.
So in my younger years, I found myself being incarcerated. Upon release, I found the Carpenters Union due to family and friends. The skills and knowledge and education I got from the Carpenter Union changed my life. So I recently just graduated valedictorian of my apprenticeship program here at the Carpenter Southwest Local 661. What I brought to the apprenticeship was a great attitude, punctuality, but most of all, my resilience. Frankly, the Carpenter Union has truly saved my life and just allowed me to be somebody that my mother can truly be proud of now. And right to the right of me, this is where I built my 1,400 square foot ADU. The beauty of it is I built it once, we can always build it again. But yeah, I would say the greatest memories that I had in the home as a carpenter was all the updates that I did to this home that I grew up in, and along with the ADU that I built in the backyard. The tile for the bathroom was an all-black mosaic tile, and I used a special saw to make all those intricate cuts. But now, unfortunately, due to the fire, this saw has been destroyed. It's hard to take it all in.
Sergio's an individual that had a couple bumps in the road, but he was really able to turn his life around. The Carpenters Union and our mentorship programs were proud to be part of that transformation.
Right here, remember, Sergio, the bedroom was right here, and the living room was right over there where you see the fireplace. And we're gonna try to recreate all of this, wherever our new home may be or when we get back here.
These are the hands of a skilled carpenter, working man's hands. I'm devoted, and I've made the promise to my parents that as a skilled carpenter, that I will build this house back, even if it's with my own hands.
Rebuilding LA is hosted by and reported on by me, Kate Cagle. Our senior producer and showrunner is Megan Larson. Our associate producers are Jordan Patterson and Megan Botel. Our video director is Julia McCabe, our director of post-production is Patrick Stewart, and our senior sound recording engineer is Nick Norton, with audio engineering help from David Iskandarian and motion graphics by Dougal Henkin. Our video editors are Peter Grayson and Daniel Flesher. Ben Church is our senior coordinating producer, and Anne-Marie Hauser is our production manager. Our podcast marketing manager is Bryn Jura, and our product marketing director is Becca Dorman. Our general counsel at the LA Times is Jeff Glasser. Special thanks to President and Chief Operating Officer of the Los Angeles Times, Chris Argenteri, and the executive editor of the Los Angeles Times, Terry Tang. Rebuilding LA is co-created by LA Times Studios president Anna Migzanian and executive produced and co-created by Darius Derrickson. And one final thank you to all the residents of Altadena and the Pacific Palisades for sharing your stories with us.